Hi Bonnie, good evening. This is question 5 of my final. This is question 5, part A. What was my process for writing or creating for my intended audience and purpose before my class? To be honest, I've never had to write a paper that was intended for an audience other than the teacher or the professor that was going to grade my essay. So it was like the only other exception that I can think of that wasn't like direct, like for example that did it that I knew that wasn't that it was the only exception that I can think of are like the SAT, the STAR writing exams, and the Telpas essays that like I didn't know the person who was gonna grade them, or that I didn't know the person who was gonna read them. That's pretty much it. But at the end of the day, since they weren't tangible or physical to me, right? It was like, oh well, who cares what I write? Uh, and like because they were like mostly narrative essays, right, based on my personal experiences. It wasn't so much that like, oh yeah, I had to like research the essay and try to like convey specific points to that audience. I didn't even and even on those essays I didn't choose an audience. Like the audience was already chosen for me. It was going to be a teacher, an administrator, one of the state assigned graders, right? And at the end of the day, it was just like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't know them. I don't care what they think. I know they're going to pass me, so I didn't really focus much on that until I got to college and I had to do my what's it called um history. For example, one of the first ones was one of my history, what's called research reports, book reports. And it's like, hey, you know what? The professor actually, I can't bullshit it because the professor's gonna check for plagiarizing, but it's not that I would plagiarize in my other essays. It's more that, um, what's it called? I had to cater to a specific audience now because he was looking for specific things on how I conveyed my information. Granted, I had more liberty on being able to like how to convey that information, right? Instead of just being personal experience and narrative, I could actually it being a research paper, I could rely on outside sources. Um, Another big one was my 1301 English class. Um, but it's just like since this year, like my before your class, honestly, I my process for writing for my intended audience was pretty shit. Like, so this year I was pretty much thrown into the hot seat, and I had to like quickly change my point of view and my perspective towards writing. Like I would just write what came to mind in the moment and not really like plan out an essay nor focus on how my audience would read it or what they could take away from the essay. Not really focusing if they were gonna get offended or not. I mean, for example, I know that when I went up to you to like describe my work to you, I remember I had some questions about it. You told me, hey, you know what, you might want to change uneducated to not having access to education because uneducated just sounds real harsh, real like like a slap in the face towards them, and it's not fair to them. And I could risk running the. I told you like I feel like I could run the risk of offending certain people. And you told me, yeah, it does sound offensive, and it did sound offensive when I showed it to my girlfriend, when I showed it to my dad. Like he was one of my main people that I interviewed. He has a college degree, and even though he tends to look down on people who don't have a college degree, he told me you can't just go around saying that people are uneducated because it's insulting, it's derogatory, it's degrading. So that's something that like I had to focus on and cater to. For part B, my writing process changed, and now I have to consult others for their input on my essays, and I actively listen and incorporate changes if they fit in with my essay. And even if they don't fit in with my essay, like for example, the whole I know I sound like an asshole right now for saying this, but like the whole educated uneducated, well, it's because for me it was uh the most cut and dry I could like do it, right, like the most simple explanation in my mind, even though it was a shitty example of it. But that's just how I saw it. But like now I actively listen and incorporate like what's it called examples of like project 2, right? Well, the feedback examples for project 2, where are they? Let me pause it really quick. Here we go. And this is something that can also be used to, sorry, like I know it's for the previous question, but this is something that can be used about my peers, right? The feedback that they gave me. Um, for example, Yadexi here told me what's it called for my audience. Like here we go. I would suggest for your problem is to try to put information little by little in order for you not to go straight into the point, but lead your audience to the information, and so they can also draw their own conclusions from it. And what's it called? She gave me just a video to like make it more informative, right? Uh, and that's just like the whole, what's it called? Like she was telling me how to cater to my audience, and I had to take that into account. You know what? Hey, like maybe I can do that, and I ended up doing that. I was like, hey, you know what? Information little by little, and at the end of the day, oh, sorry, at the end of the day, I mean, it did what's it called work. Um, Actually, I think I have them in picture format. Hold on a minute. Oh, what's this? There we go. Sorry about that. Um, yeah, like what's it called now? It's like explain. Sorry, part C is explain what I've learned in my what's it called writing and developing for my post for my audience and purpose. It was just initially. Oh, sorry, those my engineering projects. Initially that's like, hey, you know what? Um, it started off as a good idea, and then it just quickly devolved to, you know what? Here's the information, just take it and leave it. Um, and what I've learned is like, hey, you know what? I can't just dump my how you said it, like in the feedback from my project too. I can't just dump my essay into it and say, oh yeah, you know what? Here you go. The whole purpose of project two was to condense the information and make it more presentable because, well, if you place it in an essay format, like not many people are going to be like, oh, you know what? That's an interesting essay. Let me read it. Whereas if you put it in a what's it called in a format what's it called where a social media post, for example, how this one was, right? It's like, hey, you know what? Like that there people become more amicable to it because they just want to what's it called? They're more drawn to it. Where like it's like okay, an Instagram post, it's condensed. Let me just like flip through the slides, right? Whereas opposed to an essay, you actually have to read it and like maybe multiple times to actually break down and get the general gist of it. Or I'm sorry, you can get the general gist of it by just like skimming over it. But if you want to like get the main idea and like actually like go in depth into it, well, you have to deconstruct the essay, and many people just don't want to do that, and uh, it's not user friendly, if you will, or reader friendly, and a post is, and that what's it called helped me. Like Project Two really helped me in the sense that hey, you know what, um, condense your information, even though at the end of it I didn't do what I was supposed to do, right? Um, Something I can do in the future, or how I'm going to use this in the future, is keeping my audience in mind is going to be very very important to me as an engineer. Um, and maybe not even as an engineer, like maybe I'm thinking long term right now, but maybe even in the short term, for example, next semester, um, in my chemistry class, I have to do a lab report, and in my lab reports, I'll be like, hey, you know what? My audience is gonna be my peers and my professor and the TA, and I have to say, hey, you know what? Well, um, this is what I did, right? This is how I got to this result, and I can't just say, oh, you know, here's all the technical information because only the TA or the professor are really going to care about the technical information. My peers are just going to be like, hey, you know what? How'd you get to it? And give me the give me the process you used to get there. Um, and to me, it's just like if I can place myself for my engineering reports, if I can place myself in my audience's shoes, I can see what they might interpret or even misinterpret from what I'm trying to convey, and that can be very helpful in terms of, you know, if this is a good report, this is a bad report, especially if it's one that my career might hinge on it in the future. It's like, hey, you know what, this is it has to be perfect in a sense. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? But as closest to perfect as can be is, and be placing myself in my audience's shoes is going to be very helpful for that. And that's something I will apply in the future. It's just like, hey, you know what? Maybe I understand it right, but I'm not. Everybody doesn't think like me, or I don't think like everybody, whichever. Or so I have to be reader friendly, user friendly towards other people, and that's something I can just convey. That's something I will be using in the future quite a lot, actually. Uh, And this, Bonnie, concludes question 5 for me. I know it's a jumbled mess. I do apologize. And well, I just wanted to take it's like what 5 minutes remaining here on my recording. I just wanted to take some of this time just like thank you for being patient with me and thank you for being lenient with me. I know it's not the what's it called? I know this hasn't been like my best work this semester. Maybe you haven't even. I'm kind of like sad because you haven't seen my best work, and I want to give you that. I really do. And I don't know if you teach another like another higher level course, but if you do, like I would like to take it just so I can present to you the very best of my work. And I'd really like to thank you for being such a caring um, professor. You really do take you really do take the time to look at things from our perspective, and I do appreciate that as a student. And well, uh, this is my final, and this is me signing off. Uh, Thank you, Professor. Have a good one.